In today's Procreate art tutorial, I'm going to show you how to paint this simple digital watercolor rose on your iPad. This is a beginner-friendly tutorial and I'll walk you through every single step. Hello and welcome to Color with Kendi. For today's video, you're going to need a few supplies. I have listed everything in the pinned comment as well as the description, and there is also a free traceable for this video, which you can download below. Let's begin. Okay, for today's video, I'm using the Amazing Watercolor brush set, so I'm going to use a paper canvas that comes with it. There are two different canvases. I'm using the 8x10. I always like to make a copy first, so I'm going to swipe to the left and duplicate. And I'm going to open up this canvas. And then what I want to do is go to the Layers panel, tap right here, and then we're going to import. That way, the traceable will import right up at the top. That's where we want it. So just go to the Actions menu and tap on Insert a File or Insert a Photo, depending on where you saved it. Now that the traceable has been imported, you can resize it if you'd like or keep it as it is. I'm just going to tap here, and this is done. For today's painting, this is our game plan. We're going to start out by making a shape for the rose, and then we're going to add on fun effects, fun watercolor effects, to make it look more like watercolor. And then we're going to repeat the process with the leaves. We're going to create the shapes first and then add on some effects. And then last but not the least, we're going to do the details. There are chapters and timestamps available for you. So if you'd like to skip around, you want to do the leaves first, you most certainly can. Okay, so let's go to the Layers panel now and go to the Paint Here layer. This layer is in between the paper overlay and the paper background. And what I wanted to talk about before we actually start painting is the reason why we're going to paint shapes first and then apply watercolor texture. Generally, that's not the process I use. Generally, what I would do is I would go and pick a brush. So for example, I can pick this brush, Simple Watercolor Pigmented, from my Amazing Watercolor brush set. And let's just pick any color. This is just for demonstration. I just wanted to show you. So generally, what I like to do is I like to paint directly. But when we're doing something that is loose, we may want to lift our pencil and apply more pigment. And every time we lift our pencil to apply more pigment, what ends up happening is we get this overlap. Let me just turn off this overlap here, and you can smudge it out for sure, but I find that when it comes to a complex shape like a loose watercolor rose, I prefer not to have to smudge things out. So I like to create a shape first with one of my shape maker tools and then apply watercolor on top, just to avoid all of the smudging. So that's why I'm going to use the shape method today. Okay, so now that you know why we're using the shape method, let's create the shape of the rose. So let's just zoom in, and you can create the shape in any color that you want first. We're going to change the color later anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select black, just so it's easier to see. I do find it's a lot easier to see the shapes with a darker color, and then you can change the color later. So just select a dark color of your choice, and then go to Shape Maker A. So it's kind of midway through the brush set, and there are two. They have slightly different textures. It's up to you which one you want to use. I think for the rose, this one's kind of nice, so I'm going to use Shape Maker A. And I'm using it at the brush size of 60%. And you may want to change this size depending on how hard you press on the screen. So what we're going to do is create the shape of this rose, but we're not going to use the guide as is, because then it won't be a very loose style. We're trying to do this in a more loose style. So when it comes to creating a shape for loose roses, I like to start in the center and then work my way around. So let me show you how I like to do it. So I create kind of like a semicircle and then another semicircle. You see how they're kind of interlocked? And then create more petals as I go around, and then apply more pressure to the pen as I move around. I'm going to show you this again. So this is just me showing you the basic process. And you see like the lines are getting thicker and thicker because I'm applying more pressure as I go around. So that's the basic gist of it. And then you will create a rose shape. So let me tell you what I did again, because I know when you're a beginner, this feels a little intimidating. It's actually a really easy process, but let me break it down even further. But before we break it down, one thing I wanted to mention in detail about this brush. If you apply low pressure, that's what that brush will look like. But if you apply heavy pressure, it will look like that. So for creating the shape, you really want to utilize that pressure sensitivity, because you want to start out by making very light strokes, short strokes in the center, because that's where the rose is the tightest. And as you move around the rose, you want to add more pressure as you make the petals. So let's do this again together. So start out with kind of a semicircle and then another semicircle interlocked with each other. Use light pressure. Now let's make a few more circles as we move around. But start to increase your pressure as you move around. And as you increase the pressure, you will also see that you're getting a lot more of this texture. If you don't want that, just go in with light pressure and you can remove some of that texture. And then basically what I'm doing is I'm just going around the rose and just adding more and more petals. And you can always refine the shape if you're not happy with it. And you take this slowly. Just think about each one as like a semicircle. Each petal is a semicircle that you're adding on. You can add more or less petals and create a shape that you like. You can refine it. You can go into different segments if you want to change up the shape. I'm happy with that shape. You can definitely make this simpler as well. The shape, you can do this where you just kind of go around in spirals. Like that. That's another way to do it. So with the shape maker tool, make whichever shape you like, play around until you get a shape that you like. I'm going to go back to that original shape that I had here because I kind of like that. You see the petals and it's detailed, but not too detailed. So I'm happy with that shape. Once you're happy with your shape, what you want to do is turn it into white. Because if you try to add any watercolor effects to a dark color, you're not going to really get the watercolor effect. Watercolor is transparent, there's luminosity, and you see a lot more luminosity when your original shape is white. That's why we work on white paper with watercolor. So what we want to do is make this white. The easiest way to do that, just make sure you're on the right layer. Go into hue, saturation, and brightness. Where it says brightness, turn it all the way up to max. It is pure white, it is there, but it's a bit hard to see, but that's okay because in the next step, you'll be able to see it a little bit better. So now you have created the shape. The next step is to add the watercolor textures on top of this shape. So let's go to the plus sign, create another layer, and then we're going to do this as a clipping mask. So a clipping mask, anything you put in a clipping mask layer will only show up on the shape underneath. And you know it's a clipping mask when you see this downward arrow. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab this color right here. That's our base color for the rose. So just press and hold to grab it. And then I'm going to go to this watercolor overlay brush. And now I'm just going to apply pigment without lifting my pencil. If I lift my pencil, I will get some overlap and I don't want that. So just without lifting your pencil, apply the base color. Okay, the next step is to add a little bit more pigment to this rose to make it more visually interesting. Right now it's very light. So what we're going to do is go to the layers panel, plus clipping mask. So now we have another clipping mask where we will add some pigment. And I want a darker shade. So I'm going to go back to the traceable and select this color right here and then turn that off. And now I'm going to go to the brush set and pick the pigment bleed overlay brush. So I'm going to add some pigment in the center because that's usually where it's the darkest. And then I'm going to go a little bit lighter on the color wheel, just moving it in this direction. And then add a little bit more pigment here. And then I'm going to go even lighter and add some pigment here. I'm just tapping in the pigment. And what I'm going to do is now smudge it out a little bit wherever I want to smudge it out. So that's our first layer of pigment. I do want to add a little bit more, but I want to do this with a different brush. So I'm going to go to the layers panel, tap on plus, and clipping mask. I don't like to do all of my effects in the same layer. The reason for this is if I want to go back and change something, it's a lot easier if I have different layers. If I did everything in the same layer, I can't go back and change it. So now with the same color, I'm going to use a different brush, this hard edge overlay brush. And I'm going to make this a little bit darker and maybe change the hue just a notch. This is totally up to you which colors you decide to use. And with this brush, what you can do is if you use light pressure, it will look like that. If you use heavy pressure, it looks like that. And if you keep the pencil on the screen and start to remove some of the paint, you can do that too. So let me show you that again. Light pressure, heavy pressure, and then if you lighten the pressure while keeping the pencil on the screen, you can create that kind of effect. So I'm just gonna go around and add some interesting effects here. So this is totally up to you where you want to add these effects and how you want them to look. And you can also go back and smudge some of them out if they're a little too intense for you. So it's totally up to you. I do want to add a little bit of a darker color in that center. I still feel that it's not dark enough, so I'm going to go in with a darker color and let's have a look. Not quite the right shade there. And then I'm going to smudge some of that out. So play around until you get something that you like. Always like to zoom out a little bit and have a look. So I think I'm happy with that. I do want to add maybe a hint of a slightly different color right there. So I'm going to go into the pink and with this hard edge overlay brush again, just add a touch of a slightly different color there and change up how much pressure I apply. I'm happy with that. I could keep going, but I'm going to stop here and I'm going to do one more layer. Again, clipping mask so that everything I do in this layer only shows up on that shape underneath. And I want to add a little bit of graininess with this grainy pigment overlay brush. And I'm going to do that with slightly lighter color. Experiment. And you can always change the opacity of this layer, so that's okay. So with this brush, I'm going to go all the way to the largest size. I'm just going to tap in certain areas. And do you see it's creating that slight graininess? It's totally up to you. If you find that's too intense, you can always go into the layers panel, tap on N, and reduce the opacity. But I'm going to leave it at 100%. Okay, so now it's time to create the leaves in the same process. So make sure that your traceable is turned back on. We're going to go to the layers panel and create another layer. This is not a clipping mask layer. This is just a standard layer. And we are going to make the shape for the leaves. So just select a dark color like we did earlier and select Shape Maker A. And we are going to use this as a guide, but we're going to do this in a looser style. So you can just create the strokes in a more loose fashion. Okay, so I'm happy with that shape and we're going to do the same process like last time. Go into Adjustments panel, Hue, Saturation, and Brightness. Make it fully white. Then we're going to go into the Layers panel, tap on plus, make it a clipping mask, and then we're going to select this color right here. Then we're going to go into the Layers panel, sorry, not the Layers panel, the brush library, tap on Watercolor Overlay, and just add on Oops, I lifted my pencil. So don't lift your pencil. And then just add on your colors. Now what we want to do is go into the layers panel and turn off that traceable. Create another layer right above the layer where we added the first layer of pigment. Clipping mask. And now let's create some fun watercolor effects. So we're going to do the same thing. Start off with the pigment bleed overlay brush. Going to go in with a darker shade. So go into the colors menu and go down at a diagonal so you get something darker. Then I'm going to zoom in and I'm just going to add some pigment onto one side. And I'm going to tap this a little bit towards the bottom of the leaf. You can add the pigment wherever you'd like. It's totally up to you. And what I want to do now is I want to smudge it out slightly. So go to the smudge tool and make sure you have Candy Smudger A selected. It's towards the top of the set. And just smudge it out slightly. As much as you'd like. Light pressure. And now I do want to add a little bit more pigment. So I'm going to do this in another layer. Tap on the layers panel. Tap on plus and same process, make it a clipping mask. And let's go in with a slightly darker color, but maybe closer to the yellow hue. Maybe like that. Let's see. And then I'm going to go to that hard edge overlay A brush. And I'm going to add some pigment. Heavy pressure, and then I'm lightening my pressure. Or I'm reducing my pressure, lightening my pressure. That sounds weird. Reducing my pressure and getting some interesting color variation. Like that. Okay, I think that looks good. I could definitely do a bit more. And if you want to add some more effects, you can with some of the other brushes. There's Grainy Pigment Overlay A. Let's add some with that. And I'm going to go in a slightly darker color. So I'm going down at a diagonal and just zoom in, just adding a little bit of graininess. Okay, I think that looks good. Now we are going to add some details. So go to the layers panel, tap on plus, and we have a new layer. It's not a clipping mask, just a new layer. And I'm going to add some of the details to leaves. I'm going to go into the watercolor brush library and tap on the dual color detail brush. And for this, we're going to select two colors of your choice. So I have this color selected. I'm going to go a little bit darker. And for the second color, maybe very close to black. So two colors. And now, just going to see if there's enough contrast. So just check your color to see if there's enough contrast. I'm going to go to size 50. I'm going to show you what this brush looks like here. So usually with a dual color brush, you will see a lot more variation if your two colors are very different. So these two are very similar, so you're not going to see as much of a difference. But let's say I made one color very light and had one very dark color. Then depending on how much pressure you apply, you will see quite a bit of variation. But for this, we need some color that's quite dark. So I'm just going to go in with a darker shade of green. So I'm going to start at the bottom with heavy pressure, and then I'm going to reduce my pressure. So let me show you this on the side. So with this brush, if you apply light pressure, it looks like that. Heavy pressure, it looks like that. There's definitely a difference in the width. Light and then heavy and light, you can create something like that. So what I'm going to do here is heavy pressure and then light. I'm going to do the same thing here, heavy, light. Heavy, light. And now at this point, if you want to add a few more lines, you can do that. 2, So that's it. We are done. This is the rose. You can employ this technique and paint anything with this. Basically create a shape, and then once you've refined the shape and you're happy with it, turn it to white, and then add your watercolor effects one by one. And the advantage of this is if you ever want to change something, it's so much easier. So let me show you how you can change this up. So let's say I wanted to change the shape of this rose. So I can go to the layers panel and I can find that shape of the rose right here where it said paint here. So what I could do is I could erase this entire layer and start with a different shape, but I'm not going to erase it. I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to turn this layer at the bottom off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap on this layer and tap on clear. The rose is gone now. So now is our opportunity to make another shape, and we could have an illustration that looks really different. So what we're going to do is go to the layers panel, and we're going to double tap at the 10 o'clock position so it snaps to pure white, and we're going to make another shape. So I'm going to go with Shapemaker A again. And now all the other layers are intact. They will be there. They're not gone. I'm just changing the shape. So now I can do the same thing where I go in and I can create any shape like I did last time. And all the layers above are being applied to it. And now we have an illustration that looks slightly different because now we have a different shape. So the point is, by using this method, you can really change things up later on, which is one of the things I love about digital, the ability to change things. I can also change how the rose looks. I can change the effects. I can remove some effects. I can add on new effects, and I can change the colors. So the point is, when you are painting in this kind of method, where you're creating shapes and adding layers, you have so much flexibility to change things down the line, which is very helpful if you're trying to make an illustration and you're not really sure how you want it to turn out. You may want to change things up later on. This is definitely a great way to do that. So that is it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up and please do subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!